I watched my best friend steal every man I ever loved. She'd smile in my face while sliding into their DMs behind my back. I forgave her every single time. But when she went after the billionaire I was dating, she had no idea she was walking straight into a trap that would destroy her completely. Before we get into this story, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications because you won't believe how this ends. Drop a comment and let me know. Have you ever had a friend betray you? Now, let me tell you how mine got exactly what she deserved. My name is Tasha, and for the longest time I thought I was the problem. I'm 29 now, working in pharmaceutical sales, doing well for myself, living in a nice apartment in the city. But my love life? That was a different story. Every relationship I got into seemed to fall apart in the same painful way, and for years I couldn't figure out why. Turns out the common denominator wasn't me. It was my best friend. Her name was Lauren. We met in college 10 years ago, and from day one, she was magnetic. Beautiful, charming, the kind of woman who could light up a room just by walking into it. She wanted to be a model, an influencer, living that glamorous lifestyle you see all over Instagram. The only problem was, she was always broke. Always. And me? I was the friend with the steady job, the one who'd spot her rent money, buy her dinner, let her borrow my clothes for auditions. I didn't mind helping her. That's what friends do, right? The first time it happened, I was 21. I was dating this guy named Brandon, a pre-med student who was sweet, ambitious, everything I thought I wanted. We'd been together for about 8 months, and I genuinely thought we had something real. Then one night, I showed up at a party and found Lauren sitting on his lap, her arms around his neck, laughing at something he whispered in her ear. My stomach dropped. I felt like I couldn't breathe. When I confronted them, Lauren burst into tears. She told me she'd had too much to drink, that it was a mistake, that she never meant to hurt me. Brandon barely said anything, which told me everything I needed to know. I broke up with him that night, and Lauren? She apologized over and over, begging me not to throw away our friendship over some guy. And like a fool, I forgave her. I blamed Brandon more than her. I told myself she'd made a drunken mistake and that our friendship was more important than some college boyfriend. 2 years later, it happened again. I was dating Kyle, a financial analyst I'd met through work. We'd been together for 6 months and things were getting serious. Suddenly, Lauren needed advice about men. She started asking questions about Kyle, what he liked, what made him happy. I thought she was just being a good friend, taking an interest in my life. Then I started noticing them together. First it was coffee, then dinner. Then I caught them leaving a movie theater together and Kyle couldn't even look me in the eye. When I confronted Lauren, she had a different excuse this time. She said Kyle had been coming on to her and she was trying to figure out if he was loyal before telling me. She made it sound like she was protecting me, like she was doing me a favor by testing him. And because I wanted to believe her, I did. I ended things with Kyle and kept Lauren in my life. Looking back, I can't believe how blind I was. The third time, I started to see the pattern. His name was Terrence, an architect with a quiet confidence that I found incredibly attractive. We'd been dating for a few months when Lauren suddenly became very interested in him. She'd show up at places where she knew we'd be. She'd text me constantly asking about him, what he was doing, where we were going. I noticed the way she'd touch his arm when we were all together, the way she'd laugh just a little too loud at his jokes. 4 months in, Terrence sat me down and admitted that Lauren had been texting him. A lot. Flirty messages, late-night conversations, photos. He showed me his phone, and my heart shattered all over again. When I confronted Lauren this time, she said she was testing him to see if he was worthy of me. She actually said that with a straight face. And even though I could see the pattern now, even though I knew deep down what she was doing, I convinced myself that Lauren had issues, that she needed help, that she was broken and I needed to be there for her. So I kept her in my life. I set boundaries, sure, but I didn't cut her off. And that was my biggest mistake. Then I met Dominic. I was at a pharmaceutical conference in Manhattan, bored out of my mind at another networking dinner, when he approached me. Dominic Laurent. 38 years old, French African heritage, with this quiet sophistication that made every other man in the room look like boys playing dress-up. We talked for 3 hours that night, about books, about travel, about our families and our dreams. He didn't tell me what he did for a living, and I didn't ask. I just enjoyed being with someone who seemed genuinely interested in me as a person. It wasn't until our third date that I learned the truth. Dominic owned a real estate development empire. Not just buildings, but entire city blocks, luxury properties across 3 continents. The man was worth over $2 billion. $2 billion. And he'd been courting me like a normal person, taking me to quiet restaurants, walking through parks, having real conversations. He was private, careful about keeping his business life separate from his personal life. He'd been burned before by people who only wanted him for his money, and I understood that completely. We dated for 3 months before things got serious. He met my family, I met his. We talked about marriage, about children, about building a real future together. For the first time in my life, I felt like I'd found someone who saw me, really saw me, and loved what he found. I was careful this time. I didn't share much with Lauren. I posted a few photos on Instagram, but I kept the details private. I'd learned my lesson. But Lauren, she has a way of finding things out. She must have seen one of my Instagram stories from a charity gala I attended with Dominic, because the next day she was calling me nonstop, wanting to reconnect, saying how much she missed me and our friendship. I was cautious at first, but I'd be lying if I said I didn't miss her too. Despite everything, we'd been friends for 10 years, so I agreed to meet for coffee. That's when I made the mistake of mentioning Dominic's last name. I watched her eyes change. She pulled out her phone right there at the table and Googled him, and I saw the exact moment she found out how much he was worth. Her whole face transformed. Suddenly, she wanted to meet him. She wanted to double date. She wanted to be best friends again, like old times. I should have seen it coming. I did see it coming, but I wanted to believe that maybe, just maybe, she'd changed. 2 weeks later, Lauren, accidentally, showed up at a restaurant where Dominic and I were having dinner. What are the odds, right? She came over to our table, all smiles and apologies, and I watched her work. The hair flip, the hand on Dominic's arm, the laugh that was just a little too loud. She was performing and she was good at it. But here's what surprised me. Dominic was polite, cordial even, but there was something in his eyes, a coldness, a distance. He saw right through her. After that night, Lauren's campaign began. She started posting photos on Instagram at places she knew we frequented, thirst traps with captions about being single and successful. She'd tag locations, drop hints, do everything she could to put herself in Dominic's orbit. And then the messages started. Dominic showed me his phone one evening, and my hands were shaking as I scrolled through them. Dozens of messages from Lauren, photos, explicit propositions, offers to meet in secret. Everything I'd feared, laid out in brutal detail. I started crying. I was ready to cut her out of my life forever, to finally admit that I'd been a fool for believing her all these years. But Dominic stopped me. He took my hands in his and said, "Wait, I have an idea." That's when he told me he'd suspected something was wrong with Lauren from the moment he met her. His security team had done a background check, which is standard procedure for someone in his position. What they found was shocking. Lauren had a history of scamming men. Her entire influencer lifestyle was fake, bought followers and borrowed designer clothes. She had debts everywhere, creditors looking for her, and a trail of angry ex-boyfriends who'd figured out her game too late. Dominic proposed teaching her a lesson she'd never forget. At first, I didn't know if I could do it. It felt vindictive, petty. But then I thought about Brandon, about Kyle, about Terrence, about every man she'd stolen from me while pretending to be my friend, about the years I'd wasted making excuses for her betrayal. So I agreed. Dominic started responding to Lauren's messages, just enough to encourage her. He played the part perfectly, the bored billionaire tired of dating good girls and looking for excitement. Lauren ate it up. Within days, she was practically salivating, texting him constantly, sending photos, making it very clear what she was offering. Dominic suggested they meet for coffee while I was supposedly out of town on business. Lauren didn't even hesitate. She said yes immediately. The meeting was set for his penthouse. Dominic had cameras throughout his apartment, completely legal since it was his private property. The plan was simple. Let Lauren talk, let her confess, record everything. Then I'd walk in, and we'd show her exactly what we thought of her betrayal. The day of the meeting, I was a nervous wreck. I sat in Dominic's office building downtown, watching the camera feed on his laptop, listening as Lauren arrived at his penthouse, dressed like she was going to a nightclub, not a coffee date. I watched her walk in, look around at the luxury surrounding her, and I could practically see the dollar signs in her eyes. What happened next? I'll never forget. Dominic offered her wine, made small talk, and then casually mentioned that he valued honesty above everything. That's all it took. Lauren started talking, and once she started, she couldn't stop. She told him everything, how she'd always been jealous of me, how I had the stable job and the nice family while she struggled, how she'd sabotaged every relationship I'd ever had because if she couldn't have happiness, why should I? She laughed about it, actually laughed. She said I was too nice, too naive, too boring to deserve good men. She bragged about how easy it had been to seduce Brandon, Kyle, and Terrence, how they'd all fallen for her without much effort at all. Then she said something that made my blood run cold. She told Dominic that I was a placeholder, someone he'd settled for until someone better came along. She said she could give him excitement, passion, everything a boring pharmaceutical sales rep could never provide. She called me pathetic. She called me desperate. And then she tried to kiss him. That's when I walked in. The look on Lauren's face was something I'll treasure forever. Pure shock, then panic, then a desperate attempt to backtrack and lie her way out of it. But Dominic was already pulling up the recording on his tablet, playing back her confession in crystal clear audio. Every word, every laugh, every cruel thing she'd said about me. I didn't yell, I didn't scream. I just looked at her and said everything I'd wanted to say for years. I told her she was a leech, a parasite who fed off other people's happiness because she was too broken and insecure to create her own. I told her that I'd forgiven her 3 times and I was done, that she'd finally crossed a line she couldn't come back from. Lauren tried to apologize. She dropped to her knees, crying, begging me to understand, but her tears didn't move me anymore. I'd seen this performance too many times before. Then Dominic dropped the hammer. He told Lauren he'd already forwarded her messages to her parents, along with the background check his team had compiled. Her mother had called him that morning, horrified to learn what her daughter had been doing. Her parents cut her off immediately. No more money, no more support. He'd also sent evidence of her fake influencer status to the brands she'd been scamming for free products. Within hours, they'd all dropped her and threatened legal action. But he wasn't done. Dominic's team had tracked down several of the men Lauren had scammed over the years. Some of them were pressing charges for fraud. Her entire carefully constructed fake life was collapsing in real time, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. Lauren left that penthouse broken. Within a week, she'd lost her apartment because she couldn't pay rent without her parents' money. Her Instagram, her lifeline to the fake world she'd built, was deleted after the exposed fake followers. The last I heard, she'd moved back to her hometown, working retail and living in her childhood bedroom. Every bridge she'd burned, every person she'd used, it all caught up with her at once. And me? I learned something important. I learned that forgiving people who repeatedly hurt you isn't kindness, it's self-destruction. I learned that real friends don't need to be tested because they'd never betray you in the first place. I learned that I'd enabled Lauren's behavior by making excuses for her, by putting our friendship above my own self-respect. Dominic proved he was different from anyone I'd ever dated. He didn't just tell me I deserved better, he showed me. 6 months after the confrontation with Lauren, he proposed, not at some fancy restaurant or public spectacle, but at home on a quiet Sunday morning, just the 2 of us. Because that's who we are. Real, honest, built on trust instead of performance. We're getting married next spring, and I've never been happier. I have real friends now, genuine people who celebrate my success instead of trying to sabotage it. And Lauren? She's a cautionary tale I share when people ask why I'm so careful about who I let into my life. So that's how my so-called best friend finally got what she deserved. If this story taught you anything, it's this. Stop forgiving people who keep hurting you. Know your worth. If you enjoyed this story, smash that like button and subscribe for more real-life drama. Comment below. I know my worth if you're done letting toxic people use you. And remember, karma might be slow, but she always shows up. I'll see you in the next one.